This video is by no means a technical review, it's just my personal thoughts on the GoPro 8. Over the years I've had about 7 different action cameras such as Sony action cams, GoPro rip-offs like the Xiaomi Yi, and of course other GoPros. And to tell you the truth, I had my reservations about buying another GoPro. When I had a GoPro Hero 4 Black, it froze constantly and eventually it stopped working. So I sold it on eBay for spare parts. And when the GoPro 5 was released, I purchased one, and I was disappointed because it was much like the Hero 4 but with a different paint job. So I ended up selling it and buying a Sony FX3000, as the optical stabilisation was just blowing the competition out of the water. But the Sony wasn't without fault either. It chewed through batteries like most Sonys, and because the Sony didn't have a built-in screen, you needed to connect the phone to set the camera angle, and the Wi-Fi was terrible, as it would only connect when it wanted to, and for some reason it had just stopped recording. After putting up with its quirks on my motorbike trip around Tasmania, I decided to sell it when I got back home. All I can say is thankfully I had my trusty Panasonic G9 and DJI Mavic Air to capture the amazing Tasmanian scenery, because the hard drive I backed the Sony footage up on crapped itself and I lost it all, which basically caused me to lose interest in action cameras. But a year later, in the interest of documenting my motorbike rides, and maybe doing the odd video log, I needed an action camera, so I bought a GoPro. Now, like GoPro or hate them, they've always been the camera to beat. Every time a new action camera comes onto the market, it's always called a GoPro killer, which is silly because they always compare it to the GoPro, which is pretty much the industry standard when it comes to action cameras. After all the comparison footage I've seen with the Osmo Action, I noticed the GoPro colours look nicer, and in every review they commented on the narrower field of view on the Osmo Action compared to the GoPro. When I'm recording my motorbike rides, I want the widest, most immersive field of view possible, which pretty much cancels out the Osmo Action with GoPro Super View. Now, I'm not bagging out the DJI Osmo Action, because most of my drone gear is DJI, but the Osmo Action just didn't fit the bill for me. When I got the GoPro 8, I experimented between the different 4K video modes, and I found linear was cropped way too much. My initial thoughts were I'd be using 4K 50 frames per second in Super View most of the time because I like the speed ramp, and Hyper Smooth Boost is only available in this 4K mode. But I noticed the reduced field of view and the soap opera effect made the footage look weird. I think 4K 25 frames per second Super View is the best setting, for me anyway, and the standard Hyper Smooth without boost is more than good enough. And once you get used to the fisheye and lens distortion, I actually find it quite enjoyable to watch. For some time now I've adopted the 180-degree shutter rule in my footage, and I tried to incorporate it into my GoPro footage. So I purchased a set of Polar Pro Shutter Series ND filters, or neutral density filters, and the results were not good. It creates an effect I call vertical motion blur. For instance, when you're riding a motorbike, your head moves around as you go over bumps and because of wind. When you have the GoPro mounted to a helmet, this effect is amplified, especially when you involve ND filters because of the increased motion blur. Also, it wreaks havoc with the hypersmooth stabilisation. After watching this footage for about 10 minutes, I started to get motion sickness. So I don't recommend using ND filters, especially if you've got the GoPro mounted to a helmet. I noticed that the exposure compensation is a lot better than the GoPro 4 and even the Sony FX3000. Like most action cameras, because of the small sensor, the low light capability of the GoPro 8 is very grainy, considering its maximum ISO level is 1600. But for purely documentation purposes, say if you witnessed a crash, or let's not make light of this, you're involved in a crash, the low light footage would be better than nothing. Also, like other GoPros, from time to time the screen freezes, but I don't think that's a huge issue. That's about all I've got to report on the GoPro 8. All in all, if you use the GoPro for the purpose it was designed, I think it excels. As I said before, I'm not a huge GoPro fan, but the GoPro 8 seems to fit my purposes. I'm only interested in the motorbike riding perspective of the camera, and I think it does it well. As always, give me a thumbs up if you like the video, and subscribe if you want to. Stay safe, and I'll catch you next time.